Hello and welcome to the October edition of Wild Pyrford. Well, each month, as you know, we look for interesting stories about conservation and green activities in Pyrford and the surrounding neighbourhoods. Today we'll be visiting the West Byfleet allotment for the second time this year. But instead of looking at the vegetables, we'll be discovering a new hotel on the site, a bug hotel. There's some really extraordinary pictures and images of wildlife in our Naturewatch feature. But we begin by returning to Joy Sashak's rewilding project. And you remember that last month we met James Veets. He visited the estate to discuss her plans for managing the rewilding.
If this was my woodland, I would work out what I've got. So I'd get a woodland survey undertaken to establish what species we've got in terms of trees, shrub layer, and ground fauna, and everything else. So we also need to establish if there are any ancient landmarks like field boundaries, ditches, that sort of thing, which are all indicators of ancient woodland. I've noticed just standing in the woodland that we've got a lot of hazel coppice in this area, and hazel coppice is very much tied into big manor houses and things like that. Back before the war, obviously you'd have a team of gardeners who'd be out managing those woodlands in terms of taking down, coppicing the hazel and using it throughout the estate for pea sticks, fencing, all those sorts of things. So you might be able to do a blend of two. I mean, it really is depending on how you want to manage it.
Well, I've got a lot of rhododendrons in the middle of my woods. What would your advice be for me on my rhododendrons?
Well, I would certainly remove rhododendron. I mean, they're an invasive species brought in by the Victorians, and they spread throughout woodlands. But anything which is non-native, so rhododendrons, Himalayan balsam, which you pointed out earlier, which is great. You need to pull that out by hand. But the whole idea of doing the woodland survey will enable you to establish what you've got in and what creates problems with what your objectives are. And if your objectives are to create an open woodland with so you can see all the flora and fauna, bluebells and wood anemones, etc., you might need to open up some canopy in some of the areas. But if you wanted to go down the rewilding, you've got to take a decision as to whether you perhaps just take a step back in terms of letting the drainage do what it wants to do, let nature find its way.
So as we walked down into the woods, was there anything you noticed?
Actually, I did. I noticed that we've got some ash dieback on some of the younger trees that would have been planted a few years ago, maybe 10-15 years ago. It's just sort of starting to die back. The canopy is becoming very thick, which is a telltale sign of ash dieback, which is just starting to spread into Woking now. We're seeing it in small pockets all over. Unfortunately, it will result in probably us losing the vast majority of our ash trees. There are trees which offer the same benefits that ash do in terms of biodiversity, in terms of wildlife and insects. The sycamore, for instance, is the closest in terms of offering all of those benefits that the ash does. But
I have sycamore here. So
it's a difficult. And rewilding, that's a decision you have to make. Whether you just let the ash die and break down and obviously feed the earth and that's great as well. And you might rewilding for me would be allowing that to happen. And but in other areas of your property, you might have to take a more practical approach, because obviously it's all about targets, about what the impact of a tree failing is going to have.
Out here, the right thing might be to leave them.
Absolutely.
And
let nature do its thing. It's actually done quite well for a few million years. So I think we're in a society now where we like to keep everything nice and neat and tidy, and when you don't have to, why?
Joy Sashak was talking to James Veets. And you may like to know that Joy will be the keynote speaker at the Newark Group's October dinner on Thursday the 21st here in Pyrford. Should be fascinating and not to be missed. There are a limited number, I'm afraid, of tickets available from the email address on your screen now. Well, the allotment at West Byfleet is a haven for grow your own enthusiasts, and we visited the site earlier in the year. However, the success of any allotment relies just as much on the presence of insects as it does on the human co-workers. Insects are in decline, as we know, so a new initiative has been launched at the allotment to encourage insects by building a bug hotel. What is it, and can anyone make one? Well, Wendy Grimshaw, a member of the Allotment Management Committee, explained the background to the project and why it's so important.
A global study has shown that the number of insects has fallen by 40%, and since many of them pollinate the plants we need for growing the food we eat, our own future could be at risk. As the human population has grown, the more intensively we have farmed, uprooting hedgerows, destroying habitats, and using more pesticides. We're hoping our new bug hotel, attracting all sorts of insects, will help to redress the balance. The bug hotels, this is the first of several we plan to build, will be placed around the perimeter of the allotment, since we need the land in the middle to grow food. Luckily, we're not short of space for our proposed hotel chain. Pallets on their own don't make the best habitats, so we're furnishing the living quarters with rotting wood, leaves and damp straw.
I should get some
Twigs and old air bricks make wonderful accommodation, ready for families to move in. In the bug hotel, it will be things like centipedes, millipedes, maybe bees. And the first guest to check in was a spider.
Keep me a very still spider.
Quickly followed by a woodlouse. And a superb snail. We were lucky to be joined by a couple of families with their children, and they all proved enthusiastic helpers. Of course, you don't need to have an allotment to build a bug hotel. Your garden or even a window box will do nicely. You just need a few sticks wrapped together with string and hang them up. In no time at all, you'll have your own bug hotel, open for business.
What are you doing here, Oaks? Like your own little house that you created. I think that's pretty cool. You need something else to hold it up. Whoops.
The decline in the number of insect habitats and the reduction of pollinators is now on an alarming scale. We know that even small steps to reverse this trend can make a difference. Our new bug hotel is one small step on that journey to restore the balance.
Wendy Grimshaw was giving us the lowdown on the insect habitats and why we should all be making our own bug hotels. Well, that's about it for the October edition of Wild Pyrford, except of course our regular date with the wild creatures of our neighbourhood. It's Naturewatch. Mike Tibbert's photography, bringing us a close-up view of some of the creatures with whom we share our village. You'll have spotted the fox and that moody autumn forest view, and we began with 2 young sparrows, a female sparrowhawk and a green woodpecker. Well, there you have it, the October edition of Wild Pyrford. Thanks to all our contributors, as always. We wouldn't have a show without them. And thanks to you for watching. Now, there's no November edition, but we'll be back early in December with our regular look at what's important in Pyrford and surrounding neighbourhoods from a conservation and green point of view. So from all of us here, the whole team at Wild Pyrford, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.